Hi, I'm Ashley Cooley, a birth, baby, and sleep specialist and mom of 3. There's so much information out there, right? This show is dedicated to helping you clear out the noise so you can figure out what will work best for your baby and your family. If you're looking to learn more about your baby, gain more confidence in your parenting, and get as much sleep as you can through it all, you've come to the right place. Bringing up baby is about to get a little easier. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Bringing Up Baby podcast. Today, I'm sitting here with Pamela Fuselli of Parachute Canada, which is a wonderful Canadian organization that's really focused on the safety of children, the safety of Canadians. I'm going to let Pamela talk about that. I'm so excited to have you here because when it comes to keeping kids safe, whether that be the little babies or as they grow, there's so many questions, there's so many concerns from parents because I think we're all kind of in this world of we want to keep them safe, but we don't want to be those helicopter parents that are just hovering all the time. And are they actually learning when we're doing that? So this episode is all about how to keep them safe, but not bubble wrapped. So welcome, Pam. Glad to have you here. And I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and about Parachute Canada.
Sure. Thanks, Ashley. I'm really happy to be here and chatting about this. I know there, as you say, there's always questions. And, you know, when I have had the opportunity to talk to parents, they're always like, this might be a dumb question. I'm like, there are no dumb questions, right? Like
never a dumb question.
And even if you have a second or third child, things change. So it's, it's always something that's top of mind for parents. So as you said, I'm Pam Fuselli. I'm the president and CEO of Parachute. I've been working in the field of injury prevention for over 20 years. I'm happy to say I've seen some positive changes, but unfortunately there's still injuries like motor vehicle crashes, poisonings, drownings, those types of things. Collectively, they still are the leading cause of death to Canadians if you're between the ages of 1 and 44. So that absolutely captures those young ones. And it's the third leading cause for all ages. And I think that's often comes as a surprise to most people. They think about things like other illnesses versus injuries as being a leading cause. And so that's Parachute's mandate, is to prevent, and as you said, we don't want to bubble wrap. We want to prevent the fatal and serious injuries. We're not interested in the bumps and bruises of everyday life. But our goal really is for everyone to live a long life to the fullest, whatever it is that you want to do, or as you develop as a child into adult, we want you to live a long life to the fullest. And we think by preventing the leading cause of death and serious injury, that is our mandate.
Yeah, perfect. What are those things that you see from the perspective of prevention that maybe us regular folk, parents, are not necessarily thinking about or worrying about when it comes to safety for those little ones?
Sure. So, we have data on, what we actually see as the leading causes of death. And when we say serious injury, we are looking at, you need to go to the hospital or you need to be admitted, that kind of thing. And it differs between those, when we look at those. So when we look at, the under 5 group, in terms of fatal injuries, those are from things like breathing and suffocation. So, choking on food or bedding in cribs, things like that. And transportation. So when they're in a vehicle, and when they're a little bit older, when we're looking at them as pedestrians and cyclists, and drowning. But when you look at, what are sending kids to hospital and the emergency room to visit, emergency department visits, falls. And I think that often comes as a surprise because we all fall. It's just right. But when we're looking at the really young kids, those can often be serious. So falls from things like change tables, off of furniture, downstairs especially, and to a lesser degree, but still fairly common is like out of windows. And so there's some messaging there, of course. And then poisoning and burns are the other two leading things that send kids to hospital and the emergency department. And we those are the injuries that we see a lot of numbers on. But there's also fewer injuries, but they're more severe that we also look at. And so those are things like button battery ingestions that, all of these are completely preventable. And there's various things that we can do, both as a parent in your own home, but also from a systemic perspective. Like, how can we make those products safer so that you don't have to worry about them being in your home?
Right, exactly. Well, speaking of products, when it comes to batteries, button batteries in particular, so that you just mentioned that. So those could be found in all kinds of toys. They're found in greeting cards too, right? So you're innocently giving somebody, or somebody gave you a greeting card that has the little music or whatever when you open it up. But then if your little one gets a hold of it, what's up with those button batteries in particular, Pam?
Yeah, they can tear them open. Oh my gosh, they're in everything. They're in the, we often recommend not using real candles, but they're in those they're in the fake candles, if you will, the sort of battery operated candles too. So they're sort of ubiquitous. No, I can't say that word now, but they're in so many more. They're in hearing aids, and they're in fobs, key fobs, and
these would be like kind of like little watch batteries almost, right?
Exactly. Like those little circular flat, kind of, they look like little buttons, but and they can cause really serious internal injury. And even I, working in this area for so long, was actually surprised to hear over the last summer some of the colleagues in children's hospitals saying that they've seen this increase. Not surprisingly, because there's more products with these in them. But, things that, they get lodged in your child's throat, and they cause a chemical reaction. They cause a burn. And then that's sort of where your main artery is and things. So there's things that, kids can have died from this. Not, as I said, not very many, thankfully. But, there are things that you can do to mitigate this kind of a danger. And what the recommendation is now is, if you even suspect that your child has swallowed a button battery, get them to an emergency department, but also give them some honey. That apparently slows down the chemical reaction and coats the battery and buys you some time. So that's a recommendation. But to prevent it altogether, look for those products that could have button batteries in them. Make sure they're not easy to open. Sometimes, we complain about the packaging that batteries come in, if you've ever tried to open them.
Oh, yeah.
That's one of the product level interventions that has been done, is to try to keep, you're trying to buy time, there's layers of protection, right? Like, you're trying if they do get that package, there's enough time that you would realize that they had the package, that you could, sort of slow
while they're
them
trying
down.
to open it. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or while you're trying to open it.
Yeah. Nobody can open it.
Exactly. But some of you may have noticed some of your products coming with little screws that screw the battery compartment shut. That's something that helps, again, from kids getting access to them. Supervise if there are products or toys or things like that. Supervise your kids is always a good tip. But you're parenting. It's you can't have eyes on them 24/7. That's just unreasonable. And that's why we talk about those layers of protection. It sort of buys you some time. Storage of batteries, don't store it near food or medicine, or especially when you're replacing button batteries or any kind of batteries, make sure that you get them discarded and out of reach and things like that. So, you can always, if they don't come with those, if the compartments don't come with the screws, you can always put pieces of tape on them. But check your toys, check your candles, your fobs, greeting cards, all that kind of stuff, and just to be aware of things like that. But as I said, again, it's not very common at all, but when it does happen, it can be really damaging.
Yeah, absolutely. Another layer of protection would be for the parents: don't bring the noisy toys into your house. How about that one? I know.
Yeah.
That's a hard one to do. I'm not in that camp. I actually do invite the noisy toys because it keeps them more occupied. But I have lots of friends, and my sister included, that would prefer to keep the noisy toys away. So they're already, nipping that one in the bud. So that's good.
Yeah. Those aunts and uncles that buy the noisy toys.
Right. What about magnets? Because there's magnets, whether it's on the fridge, magnets in lots of toys. And if more than one magnet kind of gets ingested, they kind of try to find each other, don't they?
That's the big issue, is if there's more than one. Yeah. I mean, obviously you don't want to swallow the magnet to begin with, but, and as I said, things change. Like the magnets, like when I was growing up, that are available, they're not the magnets that are available now. I mean, there are those, they advertise them that they're so strong, those earth magnets, I think they're called. And some toys now are like just a bunch of magnets and small ones that get together, and they're absolutely fun. And you may have older children in your home, and that's fine for them to play with. But young kids, like, they explore by putting things in their mouths. That's how they, touch, taste, feel, smell, all of that. And so they're going to put these things in their mouths. So, one isn't great, but two, you're absolutely right. They are magnetized inside of the body, and they will rip and tear through to get to each other. And so that is again, we don't see very many of these, but when they do happen, that they are very severe. So, those are, I guess, a few examples of those, not very many of them, but they can be severe. Whereas, things like falls, people are like, okay, well, my kid falls. They fall all the time. And we're
toddlers. Toddlers exactly. are called toddlers for a reason.
Yeah, they're top heavy. Their heads are disproportionate to their bodies. They're learning. And that's the other thing is, between a baby who can't move, and then they roll, and then they can crawl, and then walk. Some kids skip the crawling and go straight to walking, and running and all of that kind of thing. And so watching their developmental stage and what they can, access. And in some cases, again, I think one of the challenges with our work is that, one solution doesn't fit all. So, putting baby gates at the bottom and the top of your stairs and the right kind, you don't want the pressure gates at the top of the stairs, but once they can climb those, you want to take them out altogether. They become dangerous because kids want to climb over them. So then you're on to the stage of watching them, how they go up and down the stairs and things like that. So that's I think that's a challenge for parents too, because things change so much. It's like, okay, well, I had the baby gate up and that was great until 2 days ago, and now it's a danger. Now I have to take it down, and now I have to move on to the next stage. So, it's something that parents have, the challenge and the joy of watching this development of their kids grow.
But it's constantly evolving, like you said, and it's going to be one day everything's the way it was yesterday, and then the next day it's not, and then we got to shift and move. So when it comes to that, when it comes to keeping kids safe but not bubble wrapped, so we're talking about, like, of course your toddler, your little ones are going to fall, they're going to trip, they're going to maybe fall off their bike. Those things will happen, and that is part of learning. But how do we as parents kind of, do you have some advice for those of us that are watching this play out in real time, but are also like, but I want to protect them, or what if they do get a broken something, or where's that gray area? How do we kind of differentiate between when can we give them space versus when should we be there?
It's a great question, and one that sparked the creation of our podcast, Popping the Bubble Wrap, is that, and often when I'm interviewed by media and that, they think, oh, if you're preventing injury or you're a safety organization, you're not going to want kids to do anything, which is entirely untrue. In preventing injury or being safe does not mean not falling, not riding your bike, not going in the pool, all of those things. It's knowing, I think, what really is dangerous and what isn't. And there's some different perceptions. When we talk to parents about going to the park, a lot of their fears are around stranger danger. When we know that is, even though that's just, from a heart perspective is, the primary concern, you're more likely to, the more dangerous piece of that is the traffic on the way to the park and perhaps falling off of, playground equipment. But generally speaking, those are, again, broken bones and bruises and things like that. So, that isn't the worry. So sort of knowing what's really, a real risk or hazard versus things that will happen and you do fall down and have bumps and bruises. So I think the best advice is to, take a step back and your child or your children. And they can be very different. So you take a different approach with each of them, but really understanding what their skills are, what their, how long their attention span is, how do you need to supervise them? Where do you let them lead? Because you do want them to push the boundaries, because that's how they develop and learn and gain new skills. And what's the difference between them taking the next step on that developmental stage and what's exposing them to a hazard that will really cause them harm, and that can be different on different children. So that's why I say there isn't sort of one magic solution, but parents know their child, and they can assess. I have a girlfriend who has one child who is a very safety conscious, and the other one has absolutely no limits. So she's got to supervise them differently. She knows she can let the one child out in the backyard, and she needs to check in, and the other one she has to watch much more closely, but still allow that child to push the boundaries. They may be someone a child that can take more risk than the other one. Maybe they're a little more coordinated or whatever, So it really is. And I think we want to give permission for parents to take a breath and that, yes, this is important. And there's some key things, like I said, that are causes of real serious injury, but not everything will be. And so, get out and enjoy life and try not to bubble wrap your kids or bubble wrap them to around the hazards, and let them take a little bit of risk.
Yeah. Okay. We'll bubble wrap them, but we'll pop some of those bubbles so that it's not too cushy. Okay. Maybe that works. That's very interesting. And, something that came up with a lot of my followers when I asked them about their safety concerns, and some of them I share as well. And it's not so much that I can prepare my kids, and my kids are a bit older than a lot of my followers' kids are. I have a 9 and 7 and 4-year-old. The 4-year-old is the wild one in my family, so that's interesting. But it's I'm worried about other people that I can't control, right? And so I can tell my kids, now my oldest, maybe she can sometimes walk to school by herself, or she can walk to a friend's house. She's crossing a busy street. We've showed her how to do that properly. We've watched her do it kind of from afar just to make sure she's doing it when we're not around. And now I feel like we can trust her to do that. But there are some drivers in our neighborhood, which is a highly populated neighborhood, that still drive super fast, that aren't taking full stops, that, not necessarily looking around. So I'm worried about them. So do you have any particular advice or things when it comes to like, okay, we can prepare our kids, but then what about the world? What about the rest of those people?
World?
I don't know. I don't know.
Well, you're right. And I think that speaks to that sort of system level, or, I talked about products, but I mean, the environment that your kids are living in, whether that's in your home or outside, how those are designed make a big difference. So you talked about speed, on the roads, and that is one of the major causes of collisions, is speed. And the lower the speed limit and the lower the drivers drive, never mind what the speed limit is, as you lower those speeds by 10 kilometers, you increase the likelihood of you being able to survive a hit by a car. So a lot of calls right now, and the evidence is very clear that 30 kilometers in residential, areas is the speed limit. That's the sweet spot where you will have time as a driver to react to, a pedestrian if you haven't been paying attention, or, somebody steps out unexpectedly. You are able then to stop your vehicle in a short amount of time. And if someone is hit at that speed, the likelihood of them surviving is, 80% or more. So, driving the speed limit and having the speed limit low enough, there's designs of roads that we haven't seen in North America and in Canada that we see in places like Europe, where the streets are not as wide. There's bump out curves so that the crossing distance for pedestrians is much smaller. Things like leading pedestrian, we call them leading pedestrian intervals. So, that flashing man that tells you, or that flashing person that tells you can go, or the green light that tells you can go, giving pedestrians extra time to start crossing the street before the cars can go, so that they can see. So there's a lot of what we call built environment. So the environment, the way the roadways are designed, the way that the bylaws and speed limits and things like that, and how they're enforced, really do add, the ability to mitigate these injuries. So, we've seen in places like Sweden where they have embraced this sort of complete streets, we call them, like taking every road user, whether that's a driver, a cyclist, a pedestrian, a mom with a carriage, anything like that, taking them all into account. And this idea that we can get to zero fatal and serious injuries on our roadways is possible. We've seen it done. But we have to embrace that in the Canadian and North American our own consciousness that we've built our environment for drivers. That's absolutely unquestionable. And then there's secondary road users, whereas we all use the roads, and we want people to be able to do that safely, for kids to be able to walk to school and bike to school and roll to school, whatever that's actually much safer than if you drive them to school, because we know transport injuries are a high high cause of injury. So it's sort of counterintuitive, I think, if you think, oh, I'm going to drive my kid to school because that's safer.
But it's not. It's
in
not.
reality,
yeah.
I mean, if you've ever been around one of those drop-off zones, sometimes the parents driving the kids can be the most dangerous thing on the road.
Every day I'm there. I get it. And luckily everyone, like, we have a walking school where, we also drive, but it's just, there's no school buses. Everybody that goes to school is within walking distance, essentially. And they do, of course, with school zones, it's reduced down to 30. I am starting to notice more and more speed bumps going up. I have noticed, actually, those things that you mentioned with the curbs and the sidewalks and popping out a little bit so they have a shorter distance to cross, the lights as well. So I am starting to see a little bit of this popping up around our city here in Halifax. So that's so nice to see, because it is a global thing. Like I'm asking, like, how do I worry about those other people? But that's not in particular my job, unless you can, like, go talk to your local counselors, and there are lots of signs that you can get for your own neighborhood, and we've done that. There's quite a few parents in our slow down, we love our children, etc. Nothing wrong with having those reminders out there. And as a parent, if I'm out with my kids and see a fast driver on our street, I'm the crazy lady waving them down. Like, no, thank you. We don't want you. We don't want that here.
It's peer pressure in the best way,
right?
For the best outcome, right? Is making sure that they know somebody's watching. But you talked about talking to your counselor, and that's so important because they are elected officials to serve their constituents. And often when we talk to them, they say, well, this hasn't been brought up by my, the people that I serve, which makes our job a little bit harder. But so it is amazing what speaking to your local elected official, being able to bring forward some of the, there's lots of information on our website about why these things work, and working with local places like in Halifax with Child Safety Link, those are the things that make a difference at that systems level. And then there's things, obviously, like you say, you can do it individually. When you're driving in those speed zones, make sure you're not speeding, and all of that. So yeah. I've mentioned this to you before, Pam, because my background's in health promotion, and I know we know a few of the same people. We talk about that injury prevention. The first day of my injury prevention class in my undergrad, it was, there is no such thing as accidents. That was the main message, and we spent I spent my entire life since that moment of like, oh no, there's no such thing as an accident. Everything can be prevented. So how do we prevent those things? And that's a little bit anxiety producing, if you ask me. Maybe that's where some of my anxiety started if I look back and think about it. No, I'm just kidding. But there are so many levels, and that's where myself as health promotion, like, there's so many levels of intervention. There's so many different levels of preventing something from happening, and they're not all in our control. So all we can really do is, well, if we see something that's not in our control, who can we tell? Our local counselors or things. And the things that are in control are around the safety of our kids, showing them how to be safe, practicing with them, and then kind of giving them that opportunity. And we are crossing our fingers for a little bit, hoping for the best, but that kind of comes along with just having that little bit of a let go, as nerve-wracking as that can be. Yes, absolutely. So if we were just to wrap up this conversation, no pun intended, not with bubble wrap. Of course, we want to, if we could, prevent all bumps and bruises, but those are important for learning, and those are important for them to gain that experience. But the main things, I guess, that if you would summarize, like those button batteries are particularly ones that we don't know lots about, but can easily prevent if they come into the house and we see that there's easy access, like in a cart or something, that we would keep that far away. And essentially for items in your home, it's a matter of getting them up in the high cupboards where they can't reach, putting the pots on the stove, on the back burners, those kinds of things, right? Is there anything else in that general sense of the day-to-day home stuff that you would recommend? Just touching on a couple of the other causes of injury, especially for really young kids, like in cribs. We often want to put like all the frilly and fun and cozy things in our cribs, pillows and stuffed animals, where we know from the data and the evidence of these these deaths and serious injuries, is that a clean crib, a blanket, yes, no pillows, no, not even bumper pads. I mean, you're worried about your kids getting a bruise on your forehead. That's better than, when kids can't roll, they get over into those. So, even though it looks so great and designer, keep the cribs clean. I think that is one key thing. You talked about keeping the pots on the back of the stove. If you're drinking hot liquids, drink it in a travel mug with a drip.
With
You
a
got
top?
right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's always hot liquids when there's kids around. So
Exactly. That coffee is essential, right? And hot tap water. I think that's one that people don't think about. So make sure that your tap water is not coming out at more than I think it's 140 degrees. I'd have to double check that number.
We've actually, since having kids, that's something that we turn down.
Yes.
Because sometimes it's like it's already warm and they think it's cold and they're turning it on or what have you. So at least it's not scorching hot.
Yes, exactly.
That's a good
and
one.
they've got thinner skin, so it will burn quicker than our skin. And keeping with the bathtub, do not ever leave. I mean, not very often do I say do not ever, but don't ever leave your kids in the bathtub, even for a second. The bathtub drownings, is when you went to answer the phone or answer the door, grab a towel and things like that. And it's amazing how quickly that can happen. So, those are the things that I would worry about. I mean, going out and playing and doing all that kind of stuff is much farther down on the high risk list for me. For the very young kids.
Especially for the very young kids, absolutely. Yeah. And for me, it was also, I got the most, where as a sleep consultant, I was very aware, luckily, of the sleep safety things. It was when they started crawling and getting to, and the first crawls are not very far, but then that one day, they're at the top of the stairs.
All of a sudden they're gone.
They're at the bottom of the stairs.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's keeping an eye when they're going through those milestones of like, it's going to be quick the day that they don't move very much to the day that they do.
Yeah, that's the challenge for parents. A challenge and the beauty is watching that, especially in those first 5-6 years. Their abilities change so much, and then after that, I mean, they obviously are still getting skills, but it's not.
We trust them a little more.
Yeah, it's not as a huge a difference from like you couldn't move and now you can move.
Yeah, exactly. Something we can wrap our heads around a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Pam, this has been an amazing conversation. It's always lovely to talk to you and chat about this safety. Where can people find you and find out more about Parachute Canada and all that you guys are doing?
Sure. So our website is parachute.ca, so www.parachute.ca. There is a tab on there that says injury topics, and you'll find everything you need there. And if we don't have it or we recommend something else, there's links out to other sites. And then they can, we're covering all of these topics in more detail on the Popping the Bubble Wrap podcast. So Popping the Bubble Wrap podcast on Apple, Spotify. Go subscribe. Tell us what you think. Tell us, we have an email and a phone number that you can call and give us your questions or ask for more information. And we're really interested to hear what people want to hear about, because we have tons of content, but we're interested in what parents are interested in.
And it's a great podcast. I may be a little bit biased because I may be in a couple of episodes, but honestly, I love the format of it because you're talking to parents around Canada about their concerns or their experiences with safety of particular topics. And then you get an expert or a specialist in the area to kind of come in and wrap up that conversation and really have a well-rounded conversation around these topics. So super helpful and all about keeping them safe, but not bubble wrapped.
Bubble wrapping. I'm really enjoying the conversations. We wanted to have something informal, like you're sitting around your kitchen table listening to, your friends talking, because we thought it was really important to get the insights of parents. I mean, you guys know what you're facing every day and what you've learned as you've gone, and we wanted to share that with as many people as possible. So thanks. We're really enjoying it.
Yeah, it's awesome. And now it gets to live there, so we all get to listen regularly. Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Pam. It's been great to chat with you, and maybe we can do this again soon because there's always some good safety topics I'm sure we could talk about.
Happy to come back if there's something that sort of pops up that everybody wants to hear about. Thanks, Ashley, for having me.
Awesome. All right. Looking for more? Check out birthbabysleep.ca, where you'll find prenatal classes, postpartum and new baby resources, and sleep support during the childhood years. You'll also find me on Facebook and Instagram at birthbabysleep. It would be awesome if you followed us wherever you listen to podcasts, and if you can, leave a review or a rating, which goes a long way for helping others to find us. That's all for now. I'm Ashley Cooley, and we'll see you back here next time.